a team that is, I don't believe, as talented this morning as they were about 2 months ago as the Dallas Cowboys. 3 rings with the Cowboys. Daryl Moose Johnson, Fox Sports broadcaster and analyst as well, now joining us here in the herd. 7 of his 11 years was in the playoffs. He's also the USFL's executive vice president of football operations. That's around the corner. You know, it's different. Whenever I talk to you, I always ask you. You live in Dallas. You can read the Dallas Morning News. You can hear talk radio. You hear the local sportscasters. So you live in the belly of that. So we're outsiders. So our takeaway has been bumpy offseason, lost a lot of really unique talents. Randy Gregory is a unique player, and Amari Cooper. How is it landing in Dallas today, this last 2 months?
I think the big thing is what's going on with the offensive line. That's the one that I've had my focus on with Lyle Collins and Connor Williams leaving, Tyron Smith near the end of his career. So that's been the one positional group that I thought really needed some attention given to it, and they just haven't seemed to have been able to hit the way that they did 5-8 years ago when they were adding players to that position. So I think the starting 5 has always been one of the cornerstones for the Dallas Cowboy franchise when you talk about them having success. And I think that if anything for me going into this season is how do they shore up that offensive line? How do they get back to being able to control the game through running the football?
You know, Jerry has always been, I think, more than patient in terms of coaches. I felt he's given coaches a year more. Barry Switzer maybe a year more. Chan Gailey. But I did think Jerry was annoyed at the end of last season. That clock management stuff gets coaches in trouble. It got Andy Reid in trouble in Philadelphia. It's just something we can all watch and play along with, and the Dak ran, and they didn't get the ball down. Did you ever think there was a moment that Mike McCarthy could have been in trouble?
No, I didn't. No, and the whole clock thing, for me, you could tell how confident Coach McCarthy was. They had rehearsed that. They had practiced that. But you never practiced that exact scenario, right? You don't practice at 14 seconds, Dak going downfield a little bit too much. Who's bringing that football in and spotting that football at your practice in that scenario? And how much more efficient was it done than could possibly happen during the course of the game? And we saw that. You can practice something and do it over and over again and have that number in your head that we feel confident at 14 seconds. We were always 16. And if football is a game of inches, it's also a game of seconds when you get into clock management. So I thought at 14 it was a little bit close, but then you hear everything that they did to get ready for that. But you can never simulate what's happening in that game. The umpire was behind. He was late starting his movement down the field. He had trouble getting in and getting out. So you don't account for those things at practice. So that's just one of those unintended consequences that happens during the course of a game that costs you a playoff game. So at that point, do you make a coaching change? I don't think so, because he's done enough at his time in Dallas, to earn a right for another year, I felt.
You know, Jim Irsay got very irritated with Carson Wentz. Wentz was not vaccinated, nor was Amari. And Jerry, to his credit, was very authentic. His disappointment. This is a team. I mean, you went into games knowing you weren't going to touch the ball. You were going to block. Those Philadelphia games were, you had to prepare for those for weeks. The Amari thing, there's a Dak with Amari and without. He's a better quarterback with him. He's a tremendous tactician. That vax thing, we don't talk about it now, but Jerry was publicly annoyed. Do you think it was a factor in moving off him?
Well, I thought that there was a potential, regardless of what his vaccination status was, just with, the contract and the way everything was structured from a financial standpoint, in and out of the lineup a little bit. You're going to have to make a move. If you don't sign him, Michael Gallup is no longer in the picture. There's going to be other guys who are not in the picture. I think because of the contracts they signed, when you talk about Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper, and then Dak Prescott, you had put yourself into a position where you were going to lose guys or have to make really, really hard decisions at some point down the road based on salary cap. And that's just kind of come back and bit them again. So there's probably a lot of things that factored into it. I think one of the things that it's going to be interesting to watch this year is I think Amari Cooper makes everybody in the wide receiver room better. Everybody you talk to talks about how good he is at route running, being able to see what's happening, playing that leverage off the defender, and being able to share that information and help the other guys. Is Michael Gallup as good as he is without having had the opportunity to spend time around Amari Cooper? I don't know. So I think that's going to be the interesting thing to watch this year. I think Cedric Wilson is another under-the-radar loss in that wide receiver group that nobody's really talking about.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard on the outside. Blake Jarwin never became the guy that they hoped he would be. So there were things going into seasons. I just want to see, what happens on the outside in that skill set. Noah Brown is a guy that I really like. I was happy to see them bring him back. I think he's one of the guys that does the dirty work for him that never gets a lot of credit. But they've got to have somebody step up. Can Michael Gallup step up and be that number one guy on the outside and complement what they have on the other side?
You're, vice president of USFL operations. If you ran the Cowboys draft, it's very good. It's a good draft for receivers. Seemingly, they're all good drafts for receivers now going forward. Pretty good O-line draft. Do you think that the Cowboys will go in a direction in the draft?
I would go O-line. I really would. I know it's not flashy, but you look what Indianapolis did with the Quentin Nelson draft. You look at what they did. Let's just go back into the history of the Dallas Cowboys when it's potentially you're going to go after Johnny Manziel, and you have Stephen Jones go up and say, no, we're staying true to our board, and you get Zach Martin. And look what Zach Martin did
Hall
for
of
you
Fame player.
all those years. Exactly. So is guard a flashy sign on draft day? No, but if you get the right guy or you get that tackle, it's a huge thing for your franchise. What Tyron Smith has meant to that organization through his time is unbelievable. So when you hit on that offensive line position, which Dallas was doing back in the day on a regular basis. I mean, I remember the Travis Frederick draft day when everybody's like, oh my God, you took a center at 30 who was projected to be a late second, potentially early third. What if you don't get to that? What if you don't get to that pick? What if everything changes and you're trading away draft picks? If that's the guy you want, then go get him. And he ends up being a 10-year all-pro center for him. I mean, that is huge in the center of your offensive line. So I think Dallas really kind of has to go offensive line, and I would be shocked if they didn't.
Yeah. People thought they should have years ago. They got C.D. Lamb a couple years ago. Now, he's hit, but there were people that said you're fine at receiver. I couldn't quibble with that one too much because C.D. Lamb, he's been a good player.
Absolutely.
What do you make of the player mobility that we have seen? Now, as a sportscaster, March used to be a dead month. They got the tournament and nothing else. I mean, Joey and I the other day were like, is March the new October? I mean, with all these quarterbacks moving, what do you make of it?
When you think back, there was movement with big players, back in the day, but just not so frequently. I mean, Emmitt Smith finishes his career in Arizona.
Right.
Joe Montana didn't finish as a 49er. There was movement with high-profile players and Hall of Fame players back in the day, but just not as frequent. And that's the one that I think is surprising to everybody today is, are you not able to find a way to make it work under the salary cap? Is it time to move on? Are you trying to be proactive? I always felt that Andy Reid and Bill Belichick were really, really good at understanding when it was time to move off a player, that he was at the end of his career and he didn't want to overpay.
Yeah.
Are we seeing some of those decisions today with marquee players, franchise-type players? But it's been unbelievable. And then we're always off, right? I had Russell Wilson go into so many places, but Denver was not one of them. I mean, I thought we had Aaron Rodgers dialed in there. But I think that's the other thing is sometimes they come out of left field on us, and maybe that surprises us a little bit more.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's become, and this could be recency bias, my mistake, Daryl, that it used to be, like the NBA has always been, you go into a season, there's like 8 teams that have no chance to compete. Same in baseball. A's, Mariners, they don't have the money, the Pirates. But the NFL was always like, I think it was 1 or 2. But everybody can beat everybody. But as the league has become more quarterback-centric, the rules, the middle of the field now, when you played, that was the defenses.
Yeah.
Like outside of Michael Irvin, most receivers didn't want to go over the middle. Now you can't hit them. So the offense now owns the middle of the field and the sidelines. Here's what I worry about the NFL. They're so quarterback-driven. We were saying this a couple of weeks ago. There's like 9 teams that I'm like, it's not good enough you can't compete. That's NBA territory. I always thought optimism and hope were really essential to the NFL. Everybody felt, I mean, even Jets fans could be delusional, but we got people. We can. Do you see the NFL going to a place where, because of the rules and what is not permitted defensively, you can eliminate half this league if they're not elite at quarterback?
Yeah, I think the quarterback-driven league has become more and more true over the last 5 to 8 years, and I think that was everybody's concern as we went into expansion. Do we have enough potential quarterbacks to field 32 teams and be at that level and create parity? Because that's what free agency was all about. It was getting parity. So you could go into a season and the fan base could be excited because look at everything we did in free agency.
That's right.
And if you don't have that quarterback to go along with all the additions, it's really hard. And I think we're trending that way, but I think this has been a concern that the NFL has had for a long time. And it's one of the reasons I think what we're doing in the USFL is desperately needed, because we're able to take some quarterbacks and get them back into game situations and start to have them learn from our coaching staffs about how to play during the game. A lot of these guys came in as mid-round draft picks, kind of get caught up in the numbers game, lost in the shuffle, and they don't have any game tape. But they're still really good quarterbacks.
Yes.
So it's an opportunity for us to bring in some of the key positions at quarterback, at offensive line, because of the restrictions on time in college, the restriction in time at the NFL. They're not getting the work they need to work on their craft. We're going to be able to provide that in the USFL. So I think that the quarterback position is something that hopefully will benefit from what we're trying to do with our league in the USFL.
Half the NFL is undrafted. So I talked to Shanks and all these guys upstairs. I have been a huge proponent of spring football, but we had a COVID, knocked it out, and then it wasn't as well capitalized a couple times ago. What is the goal of the USFL? If I said to you as kind of direct VP of operations, what's the goal in year one?
The goal in year one is to get to year two, because the other ones haven't gotten there. And we've got great partners with NBC helping us with our distribution of the product, along with Fox. We've got great backing from Fox as kind of the parent of the USFL. So I think some of the things that you talked about where the other two didn't have success. Now, the pandemic, obviously, outside of everybody's control, but there were some finances there that impacted that as well. So, we have that covered. Now it's up to us to put that product back out on the field that fans want to gravitate and watch on television. For me, it's always been about, the why for these players. And I've told our coaches, we've got 8 great head coaches, and I've always told them, you're going to be blown away by these guys, because you will think you want to give them a rest, and you will not be able to get them off the field. They know what the NFL scouts are saying about them and what they need to do to get back to the NFL, and they're going to do everything they possibly can. And then we also have those guys, the NFL's not in their future, but they love the game of football, and they just want to keep playing it. Yeah. So it's really, for us, it's, what is your why? How do we help you achieve that? And that's one of the big areas for me. So number one is getting to year two and finally getting one of these spring leagues up and running in a way where it's sustainable. And I have all the confidence in the world that we're going to do that. And then it really becomes player-centric for me, just helping these guys fulfill their dreams, whatever that is. If it's getting back to the NFL, let's do everything we possibly can. We're going to give you the assets and the strength and conditioning room with our head coaches and our coaching staffs. If it's just for you to continue to play this fantastic game, come on, let's help you get that one done too.
April 16th, couple of weeks away, New Jersey Generals at Birmingham Stallions, 7:30 Eastern on Fox. Daryl Moose Johnson, great seeing you again.
Great to see you, especially in person.
He has aged better than any fullback in league history. You look fantastic. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd, or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.